In this video, I'm going to show you 3 or 4 different ways that you can present another view in SwiftUI. Hi, my name is Stewart Lynch. We're going to be covering pushing views onto a navigation stack using 2 different methods. We'll also cover presenting a view as a standard modal sheet and as a full cover sheet. But we're also going to use another method where we'll be covering the present view with an overlay. Now before I get started, let me request that if you enjoy the video, please leave a comment below and give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Make sure you ring the bell to be notified of new videos. And if you want to support my work, you can buy me a coffee. If this is something you want to learn, then keep watching. I've created a starter project for this video, and I encourage you to download it from the link in the description below and work along with me as I build out these examples. The target for this starter project is iOS 15, so you're going to have to open it in Xcode 13 or higher, as I'm using some new methods and modifiers that are only available to iOS 13 or higher. I'm currently using Beta 3 of Xcode. In this project, the content view is left unchanged from the default, but I have 3 more views. The first is this home view, and it currently consists of a text view and 2 buttons. It's also embedded within a Z-stack with a colored background. I'll be adding one more special button, however, but I'll come back to this view in a minute. The pushed view and the sheet view are currently generic views that we'll build out shortly. There's a file named Custom Button Styles that contains a simple custom button that will provide a background with rounded corners and a system background color and label being the color of label. I have an entire video on custom button styles if you want more information, and I'm also going to be creating a new one that will show changes specific to iOS 13 and later this year. Finally, there is our model called Selected Color that's an identifiable, equitable object with an ID, a name, and color properties. I've created a static array called AllColors that's an array of these color objects, which are the colors of the rainbow. And finally, I have a static function called ChosenColor where I can pass in a string and it will simply return a color from that array. And to top this off, I have an app icon in the Assets folder that was created using Jordi Bruin's fabulous bakery app. If you haven't checked this app out yet, I highly recommend it. So back in Home View. In Home View, we have the binding to the text that we can enter into the text field. There's another state property that will be passing into our presented view so that we can change the color. I'm using the static ChosenColor function here to pass in the string red to get the selected color as our default with that name. And that color is used as the background. For the text field, I'm using the new iOS 13 shorthand to style the text field as a rounded border. And for the button style, I'm using my custom button style shorthand to style both of these buttons. And that's it. So this is what we want to do. When I launch the app, I want to be able to change the color of the background. Tapping the nav picker button, we can push out a new view onto the navigation stack where I can tap on one of the colors and it'll update the selected color, dismiss the view, and the background gets changed. If I enter the words change color exactly and submit by hitting enter, I'm taken to that same screen where I can repeat the process. If I tap on this button, a modal sheet is presented with a different view from where I can pick my color. And the final view is showing me that same sample view that I used in the sheet view, and it's used as an overlay. This looks great, all of them in dark mode as well. So that's what we want to accomplish. The first thing that we'll cover is using a navigation link to present a second view onto the navigation stack. But first we're going to have to create and design a view that gets pushed onto the stack. So let me show you something that was advised by another great iOS content provider who goes by the name of Rebeloper. He has lots of great videos, and I recently watched this one. Now, the content here is very different from what I'm going to show you, but he did suggest one thing that I find very useful, and that's this. Currently, when I launch the app, I'm shown the content view, which is just this text view. What I want to show is my home view instead. But instead of changing my app main's content destination, I'm going to go to content view, but instead of presenting the text view, I'm going to present home view. Now I need this home view to be embedded in a navigation view. But instead of doing that in the home view itself, I'm going to do it here in content view. This way I can reuse views that sometimes will be in a navigation stack and other times may not. So if they're not in a navigation stack, then there'll be no navigation bar. When I return to the home view screen, it does not look like it is inside the navigation stack. So I can fix this by embedding the preview itself within a navigation view. Then I can add a navigation title modifier to my body content, and I'll just say presenting views. Now we're ready to get started. Open the push view file now then, and we'll be passing in the selected color that we use when we change the view. So start by creating a binding, and we'll call that selected color of type selected color. Then to fix the preview complaining, we'll add a constant, and we'll use the selected color's static function called chosen color and pass in the string red. Next, I'm going to replace the text view with a list with an embedded for each loop. And we're going to iterate through each one of the selected colors static all colors array. Within the body, we'll create a Z-stack. And for the first element, we'll choose the color's color property. And then as the second element, we'll create a text view with the color's name. And then we'll set the height of each of these items to a height of 40. Now, if the selected color is equal to the current color, we want to set the foreground color of this text view to white. Else, we can leave it at black. So we can use that ternary operator here, and since selected color is equitable, we can do that comparison. We see now that the red color swatch is now white. Also, I want to remove this list separator here, and I can do that with another new iOS 13 modifier that I can apply to the for each loops item, and that's the list row separator hidden. Now, since this is going to be pushed onto a navigation stack, it'll inherit the navigation bar. So I want to assign a title, and I can do that, and we'll just use the selected color's name. But I also want to set the navigation bar title display mode to inline. To see what this looks like in the preview, then we'll have to embed our preview itself within a navigation view. Before we leave this though, there's one thing that I want to do, and that is to make sure that when someone taps on one of the color swatches, the selected color changes, and this view will get dismissed. And to dismiss a view, we can use the new iOS 13 environment variable called dismiss. And we'll assign it to a private property called dismiss. And then we can put an on-tap gesture on our color swatch that will do two things when tapped. First is to set the selected color to the current color. And then we can simply just call the dismiss function that is part of that new environment object. And now I can return to Home View and create the button that will navigate to this view. So we need to create a button that'll push the pushed view onto the navigation stack. And this is a special kind of button called Navigation Link. So I'm going to replace the comment text here with that navigation link. And we have a number of options, but the one that we want is destination and label. Now if I tap on the closure, I'll get that nice Swift trailing closure syntax. And this looks very much like a button where you place an action in the first code block and the label in the second block. In fact, it's so much like a button that the button style that we've applied to the entire VStack will get applied here too. The difference is that the code block is not an action, but it's our destination. So within the destination, we'll have to pass along our selected color to the pushed view as a binding. And then for the label, we can simply use the text view using Text Navigation Picker. And finally, we'll add some padding to the top. Now there is no need to run on the simulator right now. We can do that here, right in the preview, if we get into preview mode. Now each time we tap on that Navigation Picker Navigation Link button, we're taken to the pushed view. And when we tap on a color swatch, it binds the new color to the selected color, and the push view gets dismissed, and our background color is changed. Perfect. Well, there's another way to push a view onto the navigation stack, and that is to create what is really going to be a hidden navigation link button that's going to be bound to a Boolean property that, when set to true, will push a specified view onto the stack. So just below our current navigation link button, we'll create a new one, but this time we're going to choose the one that is active, destination, and label. Now, isActive needs to be bound to some Boolean property. So let's return to the top and we'll create a state variable that we're going to call showPushedView. And I'll initialize it as false. I can now use this then to bind it to the isActive property. Well, the destination is going to be the same as our original navigation link. So we're going to use the pushed view, making sure that we pass in the selected color as the binding. And then finally, we'll need to set a view here, but it has to be invisible. So for that, we can create an empty view. Nothing changes in our UI. So how are we going to trigger this Boolean value to change? Well, it's kind of hokey, but I have a text view here that I'm asking you to enter the words change color. And if you do that and submit those words correctly, then I'm going to toggle the show pushed view state. Otherwise, we're just going to erase what text was entered. So within the onSubmit button, we can check if the string matches that. And if it does, we'll toggle show pushed view. And then regardless of whether or not we're successful or not, we're going to, after we submit, clear the text. Let's test this in the preview then. When I type in change color and submit, a pushed view is pushed onto the stack, and as before, I can change the color and it dismisses and returns. If it doesn't match and I enter some false text or inaccurate text, the text box just clears. Well, that's navigation links. Next, we'll take a look at the sheet and overlays. So for this, we're going to need a new view. But the first thing I'm going to do is to open our pushed view and copy both the bindings to selected color and the dismiss environment object. And I'm going to use that in our new sheet view. So I'll just paste them there. And then we need to fix the preview just as we had done for pushed view. Next, I'm going to replace this text view and create a rounded rectangle with a corner radius of 20. And I'm going to create a fill that'll use the color of the system background. I'll add some padding around that. And then I'm going to add a shadow using the color black, but with an opacity of 4, and a radius and X and Y all of 2. Now within this rounded rectangle, I want to overlay that list view. So it's going to look pretty much the same, but it won't eventually be identical to what we had in our push view. But we can start from there. So let's return to that view and copy the list and paste it into here. Now, for some reason beyond my explanation, the preview breaks. So bear with me here. I have no idea. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So I'm going to be making some changes to the code. So trust me, we can't reuse that part of the view. I'm going to change the style of the list to a list style of plain using that new iOS 13 shorthand. And I'll also set a padding of 40. Next, I'll set the overlays frame to a width of 250 and a height of 450. And then I'm going to take that entire rounded rectangle and overlay and embed it in a VStack. And I'll add a spacer. Now it's too bad that the preview isn't working here because it did once work for me. Anyway, trust me again, let's go back to home view and maybe we can test it. So I'm going to create a new state property called showSheet as a Boolean, and I'll initialize it as false. And then next, as the action to sheet picker, I'll just toggle that show sheet. And then to present a sheet, attached to this button, I'll create a sheet modifier using the isPresented option. And we'll bind isPresented to show sheet. OnDismiss is optional, so we can delete it. And then for the content, we'll present our sheet view passing in our selected color. Let's test this out now in preview. It works as expected. Might not look that great, but that's exactly what we wanted. For our final example, we want to take a look at an overlay option. Now, one might think that we could use a full cover sheet. So let's look at that, and I'll show you why I don't like it. First, we'll create a new state property that I'll call showOverlay, and I'll initialize it as false. Then as the action for the overlay picker, I'll toggle this property. Now I can just copy the sheet from the previous button and apply it here, but I'll change it to a full screen cover, and I'll need to change the binding to show overlay instead of sheet. If we test this now, I see two problems. One, there's no way to dismiss this view if I don't select a color. Plus, it presents up from the bottom, and that's not what I want. I want it to fade over top, and I want to see the background behind this rectangle. Currently, all I can see is the picker and not the background. And I also want to use that view that I just created for my modal sheet, but I'm going to have to make some modifications. So let's return to sheet view. And we're going to bind the show overlay property to this view as well. And since this preview is currently broken, let's dismiss it as I find it quite distracting. I'll add a constant to the preview to stop the error. Next, I'll embed the entire V stack in a Z stack. Then, as the first item in the Z stack, I'm going to create a color view that is the same color as the background, which is system background, and tell it to ignore the safe area so that it'll expand over the entire view. Now, because I want it to be somewhat opaque when show overlay is active, we'll set its opacity based on show overlay to 0.4. Otherwise, it will be 1. Now then, I can assign a on tap gesture to this entire color view so that when it's tapped, if show overlay is true, we'll toggle it. And that will dismiss our view, hopefully. Else, we know we must have presented the show sheet version, so we're just going to dismiss because we have a sheet that was presented. And then within the tap gesture of the color swatch, we can do exactly the same thing after setting the selected color. When I return to the home view now, I see I have 2 errors. The first one is for the sheet, so we'll need to pass in that show overlay binding. And we're no longer going to be using this show full screen cover view. So let's delete that entirely. What we are going to do is to display that view as an overlay when the show overlay is true. And since our view is enclosed in a Z stack, we can then conditionally show this sheet view based on the show overlay property if show overlay is true. And if it is, we can call that sheet view using the selected color and whatever the current status of show overlay is. So if it's true, it will show. If it's false, it won't. All right, let's bring back the preview then and test. Well, this is almost the way I want, but the presentation and dismissal is just a bit too abrupt. I want it to be a gradual fade in. So I'm going to embed the show overlay toggle within an with animation block, and that will create in a smooth transition. Well, transitioning to that overlay is nice, but the dismissal is still abrupt. So I need to go to sheet view as well, and both instances where I toggle, I'll have to wrap that in a with animation block as well. And that's in both instances. Let's test once more. It smoothly transitions in as before. That didn't change. And when I select the color and dismiss, it's still abrupt. It doesn't appear that that with animation is working here. And the reason is that our view, that conditional view, needs to be ensured that it's on top. And I can do that by selecting it and choosing a Z index of 1. So one more test. A smooth transition in and a smooth transition out, just as we wanted. So let's just run it on the simulator to make sure it's working fine. And I can see it looks just the same in light mode as it did in the preview. If I switch to dark mode, it looks good here too. So I hope you found this video helpful, and it will give you some ideas on how you might want to present your views to your users depending on what you want to accomplish. Thanks for watching.